Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. We've recently had some discussions about abstractions, that they don't exist, and how useful they are, and how you get them, and what they can be used for, and that they don't exist. And someone, I believe, was it War Video, who said you should do a video on the concrete-bound mentality, now to sort of complement that. And it was something that I was going to bring up, actually, while I was talking about the video, abstractions video, and I decided not to because it was too much of a tangent. So it's a good idea to go ahead and do a video right on that. The concrete-bound mentality, or the opposite of the mentality that cares to abstract. Now, before I mention that, I would mention the abstract mentality. There's that too. There's this mentality of people who always want to group things together and abstract into something else. Always. They're grouping and abstracting, and the problem that they have is they're not doing the grouping according to reality. So there's these other people who refuse to group, and we're going to get to them, but there are people like Thou Art That, with zeros at the end of his name, I think. Zero, Thou Art That, Zero, who says things, weird things. You know, he says like, Mr. Cropper, isn't it true, I'm just making this up, isn't it true that since we have to view quantum mechanic experiments each time we do the experiment, we have to view it, and each one of us views reality in his own way, aren't we therefore sort of living in an experiment of some kind? You know, grouping things together just wildly. Oh, you don't go investigate the guy. He's crazy. So you've got those people on the one hand who are all too willing to group things together and come up with a new abstraction or a new idea from that. Just, it's imagination. It's just our huge brains that humans have, genetically massive brains. And we play with them. We come up with stuff. Some of us are more disciplined and more adult-like, and our thoughts are related to reality. But there are others who like to think about gremlins and angels on the heads of pins and things like that, wasting their life and their brain calories. So now let's go from the abstraction-loving people who don't relate it to reality down to the other people, which we were going to talk about to begin with. The concrete-bound type. The anti-conceptual mentality. You say to them, look, we did a good job when we attacked Japan, and we did a good job when we attacked Germany, and South Korea's not doing bad by most people's standards. I don't see why we shouldn't take care of Iran the same way. It's violent, it's threatening us, it's trying to get nuclear weapons. And they say, it's completely different. How can you say that Iran is the same as those others? Iran is in the Middle East. Iran has Muslims. Iran has a lot of oil. Iran has a very ancient, long history. I mean, what else can you name about Iran that doesn't fit exactly with Japan and Germany? Japan and Germany are not major oil nations. Taiwan and South Korea, not a lot of oil. And Iran's got a lot of oil. Now, this type of person isn't willing to do the grouping. You could just group these states and say, I don't care where they are in the world, I don't care what religion they are, they threaten us, they try to attack us, we're going to occupy them. That's one attitude to take. The other attitude is, no, you know, Germany and Japan, that's working out fine, but you can't do it in Iran because it's different. It's different. Here we are. We've arrived at the point of the video. There are people who always want to see what's different, and there are people who always want to see what's the same, and then there are people who look at reality. And sometimes you have to work out the differences, and sometimes you have to look at the similarities. So the anti-conceptual mentality will, anytime you say this and that is the same, they'll say, no, it's different. You know, these terrorists are not those terrorists. Like the Palestinian Liberation Authority is good. It's a good terrorist group because they're in favor of whatever, but the Hamas is a bad terrorist group and stuff like that. They, you know, they say you have to, this is a complex matter. That's their favorite thing, these type of imbeciles. This is a very complex matter, and there's a lot of things that have to be considered. They're not willing to simplify the matter down and say, well, it's a pretty simple matter when you get to it. They're not that type of person. They want to complexify everything. They say it's a complex matter. So, you've got people who don't want to look at the individual concrete cases. They just want to string big ideas together into other big ideas. They're just always floating, like thou art that. And then you've got the people who won't get to the big ideas. You say, well, these and this is the same, and they say, no, 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 and they name a bunch of concretes that are different, and they're always focused in with a magnifying glass on the concretes. Now, I would say that this is where we have to take the golden mean and go down the middle, but that's not true. This is where we have to be objective. We cannot judge everything on whether it's the different from things. Everything's different. You only need two things to establish difference. This is different from that. This thing is not that thing. You only need two. But for similarity, you need three or more. You need this and this are similar as compared to that. See? So it's just on the very most basic way, it's a higher functioning way of thinking to say that and that. Those are different. But those two are the same compared to this. You see, there's a little bit more going on there. And there's people who don't want to look at that and that being different. They just want to look at this thing. Oh, no, it's not that, it's this. Look at this. They want to be... and there's other people who just say, well, what if there were two things that were similar? And there were other things that were different. And they were all similar, and they were different in different ways, but they were similar. That's thou art that. That's the type who doesn't ever tie anything down. And what you have to do instead is make sure that when you do a concept, here's the proper way, instead of doing those two other crazy ways. When you do want to make a concept, a new integration, a new grouping, you make sure that all the things that you put in the group have that essential quality, and you make sure that it's useful for something. You can't make arbitrary groupings, that you have to need this grouping for something, for some reason, something you're talking about or whatever. And if you follow those general guidelines when you're thinking, or when you're listening to others, or when you're reading and evaluating what's being, or when you're writing, don't always be floating. You got to bring it down to reality, and don't always be focusing on reality and saying, well, forget about the similarities between these terrorist groups. Look at the differences. These guys wear mustaches, you know. What the hell does that matter? So there, I think we've said a few things on the concrete pound mentality. Perhaps not a definitive statement. This might start a conversation, as they say. Let's see how that goes.